Welcome to this week's edition of the Belau Report. I'm Jane Belau. Our guest this week is Rochester City Councilman Shaun Palmer. And we welcome you back.
Well, thank you for having me.
And you're going to bring us up to date on the City Council. But the big news was in the Post Bulletin. It said you're going to consider the budget today.
Yes, we're starting our budget. The staff have been working. Ms. Holmes has been working on our budget probably since March, and all the input. And today is our first look at it and our first chance to speak to it. And
what do you think at 6.5% increase?
Well, 6.5% is a lot, but you have to remember last year we held it at 0 because of COVID. And that also affects this year because you would have had a raise last year and a raise this year. So it kind of compounds itself. So you could almost argue the point that 4.5 would keep us about even, and there's some other assets that we need to invest in. Our revenues have been hit hard by COVID. Our hotel and motel tax is down about 70%. Our airport is down about 70%. Our expenses stayed the same. We still had the same number of police, the same number of fire. We had, in fact, more expenses. Some covered by the federal government and some not covered by the federal government.
How much did we get from the feds to help us through this period of lowered revenue?
The last revenue that we got was $17.5 million for what they call the rescue money. And there's tails to that and what we can and can't use it for. We have received half of that. We'll receive the other half sometime next year. As we were talking, an example, $65 million went to Duluth. And that's all based on our LGA formula, which is a screwy system that the state uses to redistribute our sales tax or our income tax.
And you said some of the other cities which are bigger and more significant, would you say, got bigger amounts?
St. Paul, which is less than 3 times bigger than we did, got $360 million. And the city of Rochester did not. The formula is based on a number of houses you had built in the 30s and 40s. It's the number of this and that, and half the cities in the state kind of win and half the cities don't. We've always been seen as a well-to-do community, and so we don't receive as much money in that formula.
Tell our viewers what the process will be now. The council will look today on Monday when we're recording this program. And then what happens?
Well, I went over the budget on Friday and Saturday and then Sunday, and I sent about 9 questions because I questioned, why are we doing this and why are we doing that? And then today they'll make their presentation and say, what is your feelings for what you want or not want? Do you have a stomach for 6.5%? Do you want to cut it to 4.5%? And if you do, what would you like to cut? At 1% of our tax rate is about $800,000. And so if you want to cut 1%, you're cutting $800,000 out of your budget.
What do you think?
It's going to be an interesting discussion. I'm comfortable with about 5.5. At first I would like to have 2 or 3%. But if you really look at the numbers and the revenues that we've lost, again, we lost money on our parking operation also. And those are all funded that we need to keep them funded.
And what are the increases for the RPU?
That, I believe that we've got one CIP project, construction project, and that is for their Marion Road substation. I think off the top of my head that's a $9 million project. In this budget we have CIP, which is our construction improvements, 14.5 for our bus rapid transit. Then we also have 14.4 for district heating, and then we have 10.7 for 65th Street rebuild. That was what we'll have, and that money we have that we've got to replace in our budget.
Okay. Will electric vehicles for the city, are they included in this budget?
I don't think that they are. I think we've looked at some. We've gotten some grants for it. We got some grants for electric buses. I don't know how far we'll go with electric buses. There's kind of a give and take on that. I'm not a big fan of electric buses. I have not seen that they work real well in the northern climates. The buses that we're getting, we're putting on a special route that doesn't have any hills and doesn't run all the time, so they can recharge it. So I'm not particularly sure that they've got that technology figured out for us. And back to taxes, if you look at what the person pays for their property taxes, the property rate is based on property tax is over the amount of area that we have. And so we take everybody's house and every value of what they have and we divide it over that, and that's how you come up with your property tax rate. Part of that is from new construction, and then some of that is from just valuation. So they come by and value your house. If your house value went up, then you're going to pay more in your property tax.
What will be the opportunity for the citizens to have input?
Well, technically, from the state of Minnesota, there's a certain date that we have to have our maximum tax rate set, and then at that time that there's a hearing that we can have, what we are required to have, so people can come and tell us what they think. I like to see that moved up a bit, because by the time that is done, we've already had all the information, set our budget. I'd like to just have a public hearing on it and just say, okay, what are the takes that you have, or what do you want us to cut? If you want us to cut something, it's 1% is $800,000. Show us where you want to cut. About 57.9% of our budget is public safety. Policemen and firemen are in that. And so if you don't cut your police, you don't cut your fire department, now where do you cut?
Wow.
And the other thing I always tell everybody, and I'd like to remind them, I had to do that with our state legislative people. The city of Rochester, as a city council member, we have an airport, we have a bus station, we have a library, we have planning and zoning, we have an electric company, we have a lot of things, airport, that other cities don't have. The MAC takes care of the Minneapolis-St. Paul, and the Met Council takes care of everything else for those communities up in the cities. So as a city council person, what we have to handle is quite a bit.
Wow. When you talk about cutting, are you talking about things like RPU and some of the related park department, for example?
Well, right now, from last year's budget, we had cut Park and Rec about $187,000, and we'd cut the library $31,000. The library's budget's about $7 million, and the Park and Rec budget's about $9 million. As employees go, we have about 930 employees for the city of Rochester, and right now we have 11 of our positions available or frozen to save some money. We did that when we did the COVID, when we had no idea what was going to happen.
So, well, given all that, what do you think?
I think you're going to see about a 6.5% increase. I think that's justifiable. I'm up for election next year. People may not agree with me on that, but I think I can defend it. I think holding it at zero last year was smart. I think that we need to do that for our community, but we have to make up for that time that we lost. And again, our expenses stayed the same.
Now you're going to a 2-year budget cycle.
We're working on a 2-year budget cycle. We'd like to get out to about a 6-year forecast so that we have kind of an idea of what we're going to do. We already do construction improvement projects. We do on a 6-year budget. We look forward and see what where our plan is, so we can fund for that and have an idea of what's coming up.
How about some of these infrastructure projects like streets and alleys and sewer and pipes for water, because we haven't spent a lot of money on infrastructure, have we?
Well, and I would say that we have. Our city, I believe we have of our roads, if you take a survey of our roads, about 1% are considered to be poor. Majority of our roads are considered to be good or better. So our roads are in pretty good shape, but we have a bridge that we replaced in the Elton Hills that's going to get torn down in the first part of October here. That's a $5 million project. 1.4 of that's from the feds. $1 million of that is from our gas tax. So the rest of it comes out of our CIP budget. And that bridge will be replaced with a 4-lane bridge and lanes on both sides, and should be open in July of next year. I'm using the word should be open. We're now working on North Broadway. That's moving ahead. There's been some delays in some of the items trying to get pipe. We had a pipe that was supposed to be 4 inches and they couldn't find it, so we had an increase in price and got 6-inch pipe so that we can keep this project moving to make sure the businesses are moving ahead. 7th Street opened today, which is Monday, so you can now get across 7th Street northeast to northwest at Broadway. 10th and 11th Street should be open in the next 2 weeks, and then they're going to move that traffic on the north part of Broadway. They're going to move it to the other side, and they'll finish that project up.
Wow.
They're on schedule. They have not hit anything that's bad. Originally it was bid, and this is their plan, to do it in 3 different phases for paving. Then the first phase is done. The second phase will get started here soon, and then the third phase, which is from Dairy Queen down, you know, and down to 5th Street, or Civic Center Drive, used to be 5th Street.
Wow. Well, so what other issues are facing the city council? I noticed you had a divided vote on the masks.
Yes.
And how did that turn out?
Well, it depends on whom you ask. It's probably the biggest issue that I've dealt with. We had over 400 emails and phone calls. About half were against the masking and half were for it. But we had a John Hopkins Mayo Clinic, Olmsted County Health Department 10 days ago had a 1-hour seminar for us. And they went over the facts and what's going to happen. And with COVID, I mean, the number one thing you need to do is get vaccinated. And get vaccinated is the biggest thing you need to do. And in saying that, we're very fortunate in Olmsted County. We're at 77.8% of all 12-year-olds and above have gotten the shot. And that's very good. 97% of our 65-year-olds and above have gotten the shot. And so we lead the counties in Minnesota right now with that. I saw in the paper yesterday, in the Monona Daily News, they're at 65% of their people. So we're about 20% higher than they are. And so that's the number one thing to tell everybody, is to get vaccinated. The mayor, with her powers, declared an emergency. And we looked at it and we determined it wasn't an emergency. What we considered an emergency, what the charter considers an emergency, is fires, riot, tornado, something huge, unplanned. And it has to be something that is for unforeseen, something that's imminent, that's going to happen. And what we were told from the health department people is that this is going to ebb and flow. Everybody's going to get COVID. And if you have the vaccine, vaccinated, you will not see much of it. You know, the sad thing is the 12-year-olds and below don't get it right now, and so they should be masking. And masking is an option. You can always mask.
And our schools, I know that that's not the purview of the city, but the schools are going to be masked, right?
The Rochester Public Schools, is my understanding, is doing a mask mandate. And that was their decision to make.
Wow. So, besides COVID, what are other issues that are facing the city council?
Well, our census data, as we were talking about earlier, Duluth gained about 0.005% of their population. They've lost single-family dwellings. Olmsted County is, I think, up to 158,000 people. We went up 13% in the city of Rochester in population growth, which is always good. You want to live in a growing city, and so there's that. We'll have redistricting. I think every one of the county commissioners will be up for election, and the city council will be reboundaried. I don't know how much it's going to affect us or not, but our charter controls our redistricting.
Okay. No issues there, though, coming up?
Shouldn't be. I mean, it's pretty straightforward that they have to be north and south and east and west lines and natural borders. And I have about 15,000 people in my ward that I represent. And we'll just see where it all falls down. Planning and zoning will give us a few ideas of some suggestions on maps, and then we will vote on a map.
course, you probably haven't thought much about it, but are you running for representation on the council again?
Oh, yes, I'm going to run for your election. I've enjoyed the job. It's an honor to serve the 5th Ward. I've learned a lot. I think I'm still doing a good job, and I'm out in the community listening to people, and it's a privilege to serve the city council.
Yeah. All right. Zoning. We're looking at a unified zoning provision that our consultants from Denver are putting together for us. What's your take on that, and what's the status of that unified zoning?
Unified development zoning, and we're really fortunate to have our consultant that we have. If you look at his company's resume, is unbelievable. He's got a law degree from Yale and from Harvard, and a planning degree. And I will tell you, and I've been pushing this, that R1s are in Rochester, and we're not going to go to R2s. I've confirmed that with the staff. We are going to have our RX2X area. I believe that's going to stay the same for a little bit longer. And that will include some duplexes and stuff, and also auxiliary dwelling units, which is, they used to call them mother-in-law apartments, or taking your garage and putting something above that. In an R1 area, if you did that, you have to have one of the owners have to live either in the auxiliary dwelling unit or in the house. In RX2, you wouldn't have to. You could literally buy and remodel something.
When you talk about zoning, you run into the single-family dwellings. And what is your reaction when you think about the single-family dwellings and as a zoning category?
Well, that's the R1 zoning, and that's a single-family dwelling. And you look at the market, about 80% of our houses are single-family dwellings. If you look at income for people, that's the best way for somebody to increase their wealth for their family, is to own their own home. And and Rochester's unique. We need housing units for everybody. We have a lot of people who come to Rochester for 2 or 3 years. They work in the labs for the Mayo Clinic, and they're here for 2 or 3 years. They're going to rent, and we need that. We need places for senior citizens to move to. People my age need to be able to move someplace out of their house. We have a lot of people living in 4 and 5 bedroom houses that don't want to move to a townhouse or don't want to spend more money, and so we need housing for every age category and every need.
But you are for smaller lots, more single-family homes in the R1 district?
I've been pushing. Right now, our R1 is going to propose to be 6,000 square feet area, and I'd like it to go down to 2,000 and make smaller houses. What happens is that there's a formula that they use for mortgages that the lot costs this much and the house needs to cost 5 times more than that much. So if you have a $50,000 lot, the house needs to cost $250,000. And so if you can get that lot size down a little bit, get the side yards down a little bit, and see what people want. I live in a neighborhood of 1947 houses, and I think we're 6 feet between us and the neighbor and the house, and makes it for a better neighborhood. We also need bigger lots for people who want bigger lots, but I think the smaller lot sizes will bring down some of the cost of housing. But I'm 110% for single-family dwellings.
So when will this unified zoning proposal come for a vote?
Well, we're doing a 3-phase. Right now we're in the middle of the 2nd phase, and that's community outreach. And on Thursday we were at Silver Lake East, and we had all the posters and everything up, and we had people come and ask questions and take a look at it. We had free taco if you wanted to have a free taco. We had a food truck there to get people to come in the neighborhoods. One of the hardest things for cities, states, and anybody in government to do right now is, how do you engage your public? How do you engage to hear what people want? And you always hear from the 10% very vocal. That's nice, but you need to listen to everybody. And a lot of people are working. A lot of people don't know how to come and talk to their council person. I do your show. I'm on KRLC Radio. I'm at 125 Live. I meet with most anybody who wants to meet with me, and listen to what they have to say, and I try to get out in the community enough. I wear my shirt so people know who I am and can ask me questions. So to answer your question, probably May is when I would think that we would have this pretty much wrapped up and done.
It really changed the city.
I don't think
Right.
so. I think it's going to be exciting. I think you're going to see different options. And we have that. And I don't know if you remember back in the late 80s up on like 22nd Avenue Northwest, they went with splits that were side by sides, and that lowered the cost for housing to get people in. We have to find, as a nation, but Rochester has to find a way to get affordable housing back in for average people. I'm not talking subsidized housing, I'm talking about affordable housing. And one of the costs to that is lot cost. And if we can keep that lot cost down, if you can put 5 more houses on a block, that sewer line can serve those 5 houses cheaper than less houses. And that's where I come from on it. And you also see some really neat designs for maybe not being 25 feet off the front, maybe going 20 or 15 from the front sidewalk. You see that in some of the existing neighborhoods. It adds different character. And people can buy what they want. The market will drive what people like.
That's true. There was a lot of pushback on, say, one of the homes in Southwest Rochester, that they'd used some fancy figuring on creating the lot size. Do you think that this will be accepted by the city?
I think it will be. Now, that's an unusual case, and the one you're talking about, I think, is on 14th Avenue and 6th Street. It was 2 double lots, and it's about a half acre, and they want to put 12 units on it. I didn't vote for it for a couple of reasons. One of them was that they extended the R2X zoning, which I didn't think was correct to do. And then they also, it's the Pill Hill area. It has character. We need to have that type of neighborhood. I wouldn't do this in Summit Avenue. You know, if you go into St. Paul and you run down Summit Avenue and you see modern houses that they did in the early 60s and go, well, that kind of wrecked that whole neighborhood. And so, you know, their argument is, well, but down the road, we have some of these, we have a house like this. That's the next argument. Now we're going to jump 6th Street and we're going to get into the Pill Hill area, and I don't think that that's correct.
Okay, we'll see.
Well, we also have the old house that Mr. Mackin owns, that Harwick home, and it has an empty lot there, and the neighbors are fighting that, and I have no problem having that, have another house beside that house.
Okay, and we'll be watching. And okay, other issues.
Park and Rec. We just applied for a $5 million grant for Soldiers Field, and we're going to have a trail on the west side of the golf course, not to affect the golf course. Update some of the other things, maybe add another bathroom there. Cascade Lake, that's moving ahead. Silver Lake, we're doing a master plan at Silver Lake Park, and hopefully we'll get that done early. And then we're kind of fighting with the pool. They don't want to fund the pool next year, but back to budget, we're going to try to convince them that we need both pools. We had over 40,000 kids come swimming. So at Silver Lake Park, or Silver Lake Pool, we had over 400 kids learn how to swim for free. We raised over $10,000 for swim lessons, and we also raised that money for swim suits. You don't realize it, but some kids would come with different cultures would come and not wear the right suit. And we would have a suit for them so they could come and feel welcome. And this year we did zero cost for swimming, and that was a big hit. And I didn't realize how much of a difference that made for families, but we had free swimming. I think next year I would like to see a small charge, because I think a fee, some kind of buy-in to it makes sense, $1 maybe. But you can go to Casson and swim for $4, and they have a huge water park. The problem with that is the equity, and people can't always drive there, and not a lot of people want to go out of town to a water park. They should be able to stay in Rochester, and we haven't updated our pools in over 20 years.
Okay, how about transportation? You mentioned the buses are currently under discussion, and the climate people are saying we should be moving toward electric vehicles, and we're seeing more and more bike lanes downtown. What do you think?
Well, a couple different subjects there, but we applied for a federal grant to get a rapid bus transportation system, and that would run from that west parking lot at Mayo Clinic into town, so we're waiting to get a word on that. Originally, I was for the train. We had taken a trip out to Indianapolis and saw the rapid bus, and rapid bus makes more sense, I think, for Rochester, and that would run a line down 2nd Street, would run with dedicated stops and ticketing, so we got on and we knew so it would be quick. And that would run down on the government center and run back about every 10 minutes, I believe, is what we planned on. Be a parking ramp and a residential down there at the west parking lot. People have to realize that your taxpayer dollars, nothing goes to our bus system. That all is federal and state money that goes to the money. So not any of your local dollars goes to your buses right now.
Okay. And how about supporting things like the Civic Theater, Civic Music, the Art Center, and when we have always supported these long-standing things that were started support by the Mayos way back when. Are you still going to continue that?
Well, today's budget has what we're doing, and we kind of break it down to buildings. We can only support people to do things that the city of Rochester can't. So I can't just give Girl Scouts money, for an example. I have to give Civic Theater money because I don't want to have a city Civic Theater department. So we give them money to do that for us. We have an arts center because we want them to run an arts center for us. That's how we fund that. So we have two types of buildings. We have a building that we own, and they're in that building. And we just did a one roof project, which is the Arts Center, the Civic Theater, and Mayo Civic Auditorium working together. I think that's been very successful. So you have one management company, you have one custodial company, and they're working together. I'm amazed at the Civic Theater. I think that they just did their 70th anniversary. They came out of a horrible hole, and I think that we're supporting them. We're supporting the Arts Center, 125 Live. There's about 10 different organizations that we support with our tax dollars, and that'll be on today's hearing too. Of the 10 that we're supporting, that's an approximate number, probably 30 asked for money.
Okay. Biggest challenge facing the City Council for the year 2021 and early 2022?
Probably getting through the budget process, I think, is probably the biggest one. I think number 2 and a close first would be COVID. The unknown on COVID is probably hurting us, and we don't know what actually is going to happen there. Those would be 2 big things. Housing is our number 1 concern, getting more housing for all of Rochester, and there's some different techniques that we can do with that. And not everybody's on board, but I think that's our number 1 as a group that we're going for. Next year, we're going to have district heating. The steam line from OMC, or from the Umsa County waste facility, is going to be decommissioned here pretty soon. It's done with its useful life. It would have cost $30 million to upgrade that. So we're looking at a district heating plant that we would put behind Mayo Civic Auditorium, and we would produce hot water and feed it to all of our buildings and do that. And that's what did I say, $15 million project. And we're asking for bonding money from our state legislative people to do that. They have bonded for Duluth and a couple other cities, so we're hoping we can get some bonding money out of them for that.
Okay. Do you have any appeal to our viewers and voters?
Well, they should contact their city council member and get involved with local government, and if they have a concern, get a hold of them. We're all listed on the website for the city of Rochester, and my phone number is 507-254-9484, or you can send me an email at palmerward5@gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your candid and well-prepared remarks.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
All right. Thank you, our viewers, for your interest in the city and the surrounding area and things like transportation and utilities. We'll be with you again next week, same time, same channel. In the meantime, have a very good week and a very good night.